Raw Story is reporting on a devastating story of neglect in Washington State Jail. They say, quote, a Native American man starved to death while jailed over 13 days over a bad check. God, that's absurd. So, first of all, I didn't even know if you write a bad check that's you immediately get thrown in jail and they keep you there for 13 days. Even that seems like wrong and doesn't make any sense. Even if they did give him enough food and water to survive, which they didn't. They say, an autopsy showed that Keaton Farris died April 7th of dehydration and malnutrition after nearly 2 weeks in the Island County Jail. Jail employees refused to offer medical treatment to Farris or provide medication for his bipolar disorder. Stay classy. Farris had been given just 185 ounces of water, or about 1.5 gallons, far below the 1,563 ounces recommended under National Institute of Health guidelines. So they explain how they did not give him enough water to survive. It was way underneath the amount that you need in order to survive. As a result, he died. And this was all because he was bipolar and he stole a check for $350. I have to say, my takeaway after reading this article was, I'm about fucking ready to just swing this pendulum totally in the other direction. And what I mean by that is, I'm willing to accept silliness on the other end of the spectrum if it means getting away from silliness on the brutal end of the spectrum. So, unfortunately, this isn't, I mean, we have way too many stories in the U.S. of neglect in jail that leads to death. People, you know, mentally screwed up people who shit themselves and they stay in their fucking jail for days on end with nobody helping them. And again, they're mentally unstable. They have schizophrenia or some other issue and they just fucking lay there in their own filth. Sometimes people get sick and die. It happens. It happens a lot. We've covered the stories on this show. I'm so sick of that I'm willing to accept what I would say is the Scandinavian silliness. How you have like a guy like Anders Breivik who was complaining because he didn't have an updated gaming console for him being in jail. You guy slaughtered like over 60 children. Okay, scum of the earth, scum of the earth. But their silliness when it comes to criminal justice is on the side of the spectrum of like, oh, we're a little too humane. Okay, and again, in principle and in theory, I don't agree with being too kind to prisoners. I think I'm a moderate on the issue of criminal justice. I think sometimes you do punishment, sometimes you do rehabilitation. It's usually a mix of the two, but sometimes with some people, just punishment, sometimes just rehab, depending on the crime and what we're talking about. But there, they basically think rehabilitation no matter what, really. You know, they kind of lean on that, and they view people as, what's the word I'm looking for? People. So they, like, try to make them better, to fix them for society, you know? That crazy idea. Here we do the opposite. We're like, the second you're arrested, whether or not you're innocent or guilty, we don't care, you're not a human being. We now have a right, the law enforcement has a right to treat you like shit and like a slave because we saw you maybe do something wrong / maybe not, so we're going to throw you in a fucking jail. And, oh, look, we didn't give you any water and you died. And, oh, you're bipolar, but we didn't give a shit to ask you about that or get your fucking meds for you. No, it's unacceptable. Like I said, I'm at the point now where I'm so fed up with our insane, overly punitive system where we fuck up like this all the time that I'm willing to accept screw-ups on the other end of the spectrum. Be, every once in a while, too kind to somebody who doesn't fucking deserve it and who's a terrible criminal. Because at least then we know that our end of the bargain, us being society and the taxpayers, we're erring on the side of caution. We're erring on the side of, well, sometimes we were too good of people collectively. As opposed to now, it's like our, representatives, our law enforcement officials that we pay with our tax dollars, well, sometimes they're murderous savages who are worse than the criminals who they're arresting. Not okay with that. I can't have my money go towards that and sleep well at night. We need to put an end to this. Let's do intelligent criminal justice reform, and let's end practices, for example, like solitary confinement, which neuroscientists agree is fucking torture, but we still allow it, even though we have an Eighth Amendment which protects from cruel and unusual punishment. We gotta get over this medieval way of treating prisoners. Again, I said it time and time again, I actually am a moderate on this issue of criminal justice. But we're so far to the right on the spectrum that I'm at the point now where I'll say anything but what we do. Because what we do now is the worst possible way any modern nation treats criminals. Period.